All right, let's dive right into this explainer and unearth a truly fascinating piece of crisis management history. We often think of total communication blackouts as a distinctly modern anxiety, right? We're constantly worrying about servers crashing, satellites going down, or massive cyber attacks. But what happens when an entire analog society faces the sudden, terrifying prospect of losing all contact? Well, today we're digging into a declassified document that outlines exactly that nightmare scenario. We're going to see exactly how a government scrambled to keep the lights on, metaphorically speaking, of course, when the wires were literally about to go dead. The dispatch kicks off with three stark words: secret and immediate. I mean, just imagine sitting at your desk and someone hands you a paper starting with that. It instantly spikes your heart rate, doesn't it? There's absolutely no polite preamble here. We are starting incredibly strong with the immediate high stakes and sheer urgency embedded in the very first words of this historical document. It's basically telling the reader right away, hey, whatever's on the next page is highly sensitive and the clock is relentlessly ticking. And when we look at the actual primary source document we'll be breaking down today, you just kind of have to appreciate its physical authenticity. You've got the faded, slightly uneven typewriter font, that bureaucratic numbering up at the top, the manual signature down at the bottom. It's a real physical artifact from a completely bygone era. This is a memo from the United Provinces in India, and it carries the heavy gravity of its classification. This single piece of paper was meant to be the absolute blueprint for surviving an impending, catastrophic failure of the state's nervous system. Now, to really grasp the weight of this, we need to quickly set the scene. The year is 1946. We're in the United Provinces of India, which is today roughly the state of Uttar Pradesh. And this is a ridiculously crucial historical moment. It's pre-independence India. So we're talking about a time of immense political tension, massively shifting power dynamics, and a whole lot of administrative strain. In a society without the internet, without smartphones, without any digital networks, maintaining order relies entirely on physical and wired communication. And that very foundation, it was about to be completely pulled out from under them. Section 1. The threat of total blackout, an impending nationwide strike. So let's look at the core problem the government was actually facing and why this memo just reeks of bureaucratic panic. The document outlines a possible strike by a highly specific and honestly devastating combination of workers. We are talking about all postal workers, telegraph operators, telephone staff, and RMS employees. If you take all four of those groups offline at the exact same time, you don't just have a minor disruption. No way. You have a total information blackout. Every single artery of communication for a pre-digital society is just instantly severed. Now, the crucial point here is understanding that last group, the RMS, or Railway Mail Service. You see, this wasn't just about someone cutting a telegraph wire or a telephone switchboard operator walking off the job. This was about the physical transport of information by train. We're talking mail going from district to district, carrying official government orders, police reports, vital intelligence. All of it was on the absolute verge of collapsing. The trains themselves might still run, sure, but the nervous system riding on them, that would be totally dead. And the window they had to prepare for this? Terrifyingly short. Let's just walk through this rapid timeline of escalating panic. The initial secret memo from the Industries Department to all district magistrates is dated February 27, 1946. Just 2 days later, on March 1st, an addendum is furiously rushed out regarding the prison system. Why the incredible rush? Well, because the hard deadline, the day the strike is set to commence if demands aren't met, is March 11th. That gave officials essentially 12 days to invent, coordinate, and fully implement an entirely new way to run a government. 12 days. Which brings us to Section 2, the analog contingency plan, bypassing the strike. Okay, so this brilliantly illustrates exactly how they plan to survive this impending collapse using pure, unadulterated logistical muscle. Just look at this drastic downgrade. On one hand, you have your primary everyday systems, organized mail routes, telegraph lines, telephone networks, and on the other, you have the emergency analog backups. They were literally organizing messenger services to physically carry mail to government headquarters and freely using the wireless service maintained by the provincial police force. They were practically reverting back to the days of couriers on foot, horseback, or motor vehicle, relying completely on the police radio network as their only instant connection. But there is a very, very stark reality to this contingency plan. The memo explicitly states that it will ordinarily not be possible to undertake the carriage and delivery of private mails in such circumstances. Think about that. The emergency network was strictly for government survival. It was designed to keep the administration breathing. If you were an everyday citizen needing to send a message, run your business, or, I don't know, contact a loved one, you were entirely out of luck. The state was aggressively pulling up the drawbridge to protect its own critical functions, essentially leaving the public entirely in the dark. Moving on to Section 3, Protecting Essential Services, Prioritizing Critical Logistics. Now, what's really fascinating here is seeing exactly who the government deemed critical enough to let inside their lifeboat. The memo specifically says that important agencies connected with essential civil supplies should be allowed to take advantage of the secret messenger service, and they name a specific example, Burma Shell. Why them? Simple, because they were the ones supplying the petrol for road transport. The logic they use here is actually incredibly tight, and it perfectly reveals the symbiotic relationship between communication and energy. Step 1, secure the petrol from Burma Shell. By allowing the oil company to use government messengers to keep their own operations running, the government ensures Step 2, keeping the emergency road transport and the messengers themselves actually moving. Without the petrol, the cars and motorcycles carrying the physical mail stop running. If the fuel supply collapses, the entire emergency communication network collapses right along with it. It's a brilliant, completely desperate feedback loop. All right, Section 4, Jails in a Comms Crisis, the March 1st edition. Let's see how this all builds into an area you might not immediately think about during a postal strike, the prison system. Just 2 days after the initial panic, on March 1st, a circular docket was fired off from Lucknow. This was from the Inspector General of Prisons for the United Provinces, and it went straight to all superintendents of jails. They recognized right away that a highly volatile sector like the penal system absolutely could not be allowed to operate in a vacuum. I mean, a prison riot happening while the telegraph lines are down and the mail isn't running, that is a catastrophic security threat. Because of this, the Inspector General outlined some very specific orders to make sure the penal system didn't just shatter during the blackout. Important cases were to be sent directly to the Inspector General through a special messenger. This was essentially a localized version of the main contingency plan. The jail superintendents were ordered to organize their own internal messenger services to take out or bring in mail in cases of special urgency. They were creating redundancies upon redundancies to keep the state's authority intact, even if the entire country's infrastructure went totally silent. Which brings us to a final thought I want to leave you with today. This document we've been looking at is nearly 80 years old. It outlines a frantic but incredibly detailed analog response to the sudden loss of wires and trains. Today, our entire world, our banking, our logistics, our personal lives relies entirely on digital networks that are largely invisible to us. So, if a massive cyber event, a solar flare, or some coordinated attack collapsed our digital networks tomorrow, do we have an analog backup plan this throw? Or would we find ourselves totally unable to function, wishing we had a fleet of special messengers on standby ready to go? It is definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the systems that keep our world running.